Well, there's a lot to be looking forward at this year's ADA meeting. As usual, we're looking for novel therapies or approaches to management and cure for type 1, type 2 diabetes. But we're also looking to build on evidence that we've had in the past that would inform clinical practice. So as always, I'm really excited to be here this year.
So the BRIGHT study is the first true head-to-head clinical trial comparing Glargine 300 with degludec, which are two insulins in the second-generation basal analog group. And they're looking at individuals who are insulin naive with type 2 diabetes on oral therapies plus or minus GLP-1 receptor agonists. And the rationale behind the study is that we simply do not know. Are these two insulins very similar? Are these two insulins very different? If there are differences, where do those differences exist? And I think as a selfish clinician, it's a wonderful study to have to actually be able to inform how we can make decisions, more informed decisions with our patients.
Well, the most important findings from the study really are that with basal insulins in general, you probably have a very similar glucose control when you titrate them properly. Secondly, we have a finding that especially in the early phase after initiating basal insulin in this insulin-naive group of people, you have less hypoglycemia with Glargine 300 versus insulin degludec, which is an important finding, and we need to understand how important this really is for the patients. What does it mean for the patients in terms of adherence, following up, safety, having less hypoglycemia, patient experience, and it really sets the stage for future studies to build up on the BRIGHT study results for the future and enhance our data for clinical decision making.
So the BRIGHT study results comparing these two next-generation basal analogs, I think will have significant impact on clinical practice. So starting off with the fact that these two next-generation basal analogs are similar from an efficacy perspective is important for us to know that both of them have in previous trials been shown to be better than first generation. But from a hypoglycemia perspective, the fact that Glargine 300 did produce less hypoglycemia during the active titration phase, which is the time when the most insulin dose change happens and greatest A1C reduction happens, that's meaningful. Because when we're first starting someone on basal insulin, we're trying to get that A1C down. I mean, that's the very reason why we've placed them on it in the first place. And also, that's the time period where the patient is learning about insulin, learning about basal insulin, learning about titration. And if that can be done safely and effectively, with less chance of hypoglycemia, the patient is more likely to be on board.
I think that trials such as BRIGHT are really important in terms of complementing real-world studies and vice versa. BRIGHT is a randomized controlled trial that gives us information about the efficacy of a treatment in a very controlled environment with a very select group of patients. Real-world data, on the other hand, gives us an idea of the effectiveness of these treatment approaches in real-life clinical practice. And there are a lot more variables, a larger patient population, and different aspects that come into the effectiveness picture. And it is important, in my opinion, to have randomized controlled trials and real-world data that support each other in terms of how we, as clinicians, can approach the management of diabetes.